Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechveli.com, and now columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, I'm having a lot of fun doing all of that, and in my column I talk about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be. But with us today, we have a really special guest with us. I really was looking forward to having her on our show. Rabbi Nomi Manon. She's the Hillel director and Jewish chaplain at UAlbany Chapel House. So welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So what's going on campus? I'm a UAlbany grad. It'll be many years before you were born. What's going on campus? How you doing up there with the Jewish students?
Good. We have a really large Jewish population, as I'm sure you know, on campus.
Well, tell her, how many are there?
Because it's a public university, we have to kind of estimate the numbers because we don't have any official way to find out, but we estimate it's about a third Jewish, about 5,000 Jewish students, grad and undergrad.
Probably one of the biggest Jewish enrollments in the country.
Yeah, Binghamton.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're one of the largest percentages of Jewish students at a public university in the country.
Oh, okay.
So it's a large Jewish community. It's very diverse. Most of our students come from the New York City area. A lot of them from Long Island, but it's a very diverse group we have, students who grew up going to yeshiva, Orthodox, and students who grew up with very secular Jewish, homes and everything in between. And so it makes for a really dynamic Jewish community because people are always learning from each other and experiencing something new and becoming friends with people not like them.
Well, we have a rabbi just coming into the community who just became religious when he went to Columbia University, and he got involved with the Jewish life at Columbia, and then he went and got his smicha and his rabbinic ordination. So it could happen. And,
absolutely.
What have you seen as you've been on campus now? What, about 8 years?
8 years.
Yeah. So, have you had any really wow stories to tell us about some of the students?
Well, there's always something crazy. College students are, there's a lot of wow. But, we've had some really amazing students come through. I'm just thinking about one student who came in. She went to yeshiva growing up. She came in shy, sort of trying to figure her way out. She came right away to Hillel. She knew she wanted to get involved with Jewish stuff, but tentative a little bit, trying to figure out who she was. And she ended up getting very involved with Hillel, she was an intern of ours for a year or two, I can't remember. And she did a lot of really innovative stuff to try to get more Jewish students to come to Hillel to be involved with Jewish stuff on campus. And she graduated. She went to grad school at UAlbany, but now she's decided that what she really wants to do is work in the Jewish community, and she's hoping to work in Hillel, maybe Federation, but really, and she's really found her own place. It's not just exactly the way she grew up.
It's more involved in the
very involved, right. Yeah.
But there's a plus and a minus to all that going away from home. So some kids, it's just an escape. Good, I'm away from my parents. They always bothered me for Friday night services, right. For high holidays. I had to drag along with them. And finally, I'm away from home. They don't know what I'm doing. I could tell them what I want. So you get that. Obviously, it happens. And then, obviously, look, what you were just saying is some kids find themselves. Who are they? Well, I'm a Jewish kid, and I'm, trying to find some meaning in life. And hopefully the meaning is Jewish. How many kids do they... would you say through the year, I'm not saying that on every specific Friday night, how many are touched by Jewish community in the SUNY Albany?
A lot. Especially because we have a few different Jewish groups on campus. I would say...
And you have the Shabbos house.
Right.
Okay, those are the other two. Right?
Those are the other two, yeah. And then we sort of, under our Hillel umbrella, sort of is a Israel group, which isn't explicitly a Jewish group, although it's mostly Jewish students who run it, and it's a pro-Israel group, so that sort of touches a different... It's called Great Danes for Israel, because we're the Great Danes, yeah.
Oh, okay. Can you put your cord in between? Yeah, under
thank
you.
Yes.
Don't want the microphone.
No.
Okay.
So how many kids would you say are involved?
So, I would say Probably a couple thousand that,
Really?
you know, at one time or another come.
touch their Jewish
Right.
life. So it's a big percentage for the most part.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, and we, you know, if I may, like, one of the things you said about students kind of coming to get away from, you know, what they grew up with, I think that one of the things, especially in Hillel, that we try to do is, and that's like a passion of mine, is to show students all the things that Judaism is. So for some of them, you know, they might come and they're like, ugh, I hated Hebrew school, I don't like synagogue, so I'm not going to do anything Jewish. But, you know, we show Israeli movies, and we have, you know, Jewish food, and we have all these other things that are Jewish that they might not necessarily, that, you know, wasn't their parents' Judaism, and it gives them a chance to, like, find the thing that they connect to with Jewish life. And so I think that there are a lot of students that sort of fall in that category. They come to campus and they're like, that's not for me. But the thing they think isn't for them is only a piece of what we're doing. There's all these other things.
Is it that they gravitate towards that when they have their peers gravitating towards that, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to see this Israeli movie in the campus center or whatever. You know, why don't you come along? You know, let's just hang out."
For sure, that helps.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely, that's a big piece of it. And we actually have, we call them our student engagement interns, but we have interns who their, you know, focus is to basically use their social networks to increase the number of students that are doing Jewish things on campus. So by saying, like, I'm going to this movie, or I'm going to Shabbat dinner, or come volunteer with me, or whatever the thing is.
Just so we can hang out.
Right, exactly. And that kind of peer-to-peer.
How much has you know, we didn't have internet when I was on campus, how much has
Did
that
they have
helped?
the telephone with you?
They had rotary phones when I was
Right.
there. And I'm serious. It's like, but how much does the internet help in terms of pulling people together? Do you have a Facebook page where you trade stories, and do you know, can anyone post something on the Facebook page, or how do you do something so that it makes it more involving for everyone?
Right. I know social media is kind of one of those things. There's like pluses and minuses to it. So we definitely have a Facebook page. We actually have a couple of different ones. They generally, they're set up so that like, if someone posts to it, it has to be approved by the student leaders or me or whatever. It's an amazing tool in getting out the word about events that we're doing, for sure. I mean, that's like our main way that we advertise what we're doing to students, is by posting an event on Facebook.
But you don't have a website, per se.
We do have a website. Students don't use,
No,
websites
they don't go
are
to
not.
Website. No, it's the social
Yeah,
media,
social
Facebook,
media.
LinkedIn, whatever,
Right.
to push it. Do you Twitter?
We do
You
have a
tweet?
Twitter account.
Do you tweet?
I don't really tweet. I mean, every once in a while we have a student who gets really into it, and they do keep the Hillel account going, but it's not I don't find a lot of my students are tweeting, so it's not a huge draw. Instagram is a good one. We have an Instagram account. But yeah, social media is key for reaching students.
So let me ask you, you have this, something I saw online that says World of Jewish Culture. And it's like a brochure and all this, and I was just wondering if you can explain how that came about and what it is. And
yeah, so it's actually on hold this year. We're not doing it, but the past 4 years, I think, we've had the university in general has these living learning communities. So it's the idea is that freshmen come to campus, they live with students who they're also taking specific classes with, they have special events with just those students, so they, you know, it makes a big school small. So a few years ago I went to the university and said, like, let's do a Jewish one, you know, like a Jewish culture, because we have a Judaic studies program, kind of made sense. We did it for a few years. The numbers tended to be really small. So this year we decided to not do it. It was successful, but just small. It was a lot of work for something that was reaching not so many students.
You know, I wanted to ask something you touched upon, Israel. Of course, Judaism and Israel could be separate. You could be a good Jew and not be in Israel, and you can be in Israel. And, you know, I mean, it's very nice and all that, but you may not be doing anything Judaica, so to speak, keeping kosher, putting on tefillin. Right. But, you know, that there are always these stories that the Palestinians, you know, or the PLO, like Israel's the evil because they beat up all kinds of people, and you know, they're even, the Jewish kids are a little bit intimidated. I don't know what it is. I mean, what's the situation at UAlbany?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're really lucky at UAlbany that we don't have a whole lot of anti-Israel stuff going on. Like I said, we have our group Great Danes for Israel. They do a lot of Israel advocacy, education, They're like always ready, I mean, including me and Hillel staff, but they're, you know, always ready if there is going to be a problem, but we've almost never had any issues on our campus. We're very lucky, and there are a lot of campuses that do have major issues with anti-Israel stuff. So what we do, I mean, because we don't have to fight against something, it means that we can show the campus wonderful things about Israel all the time, which we do. We have a shaliach who comes to campus every year who works with me to do Israel programs, to take students to Israel, to educate the wider campus about Israel. So we do a lot of positive pro-Israel stuff, and I think we've built a lot of bridges that way, and we haven't had to deal with the anti.
I met one of these shliachs,
Oh, did you?
Yeah, when I came up one time. Very nice woman, very pleasant, very trying to be very helpful, and I don't know, she just went back to Israel or...
Yeah, her name was Keshet, I think.
I'm sorry?
Keshet?
Yes.
Yeah.
They stay for about a year?
They stay for a year or two, yeah.
Now when I was there, they had Jewish Student Coalition, the JSC Hillel. It was hyphenated.
Right.
Jewish Student Coalition is no more?
I think a couple of years ago, the students got rid of the JSC. Okay. But I mean, we still have essentially a student group within Student Association that is Hillel, was JSC Hillel, and that runs, I mean, I work very closely with them. That's my student board, and they run a lot of programs and get a lot of money from the Student Association to run those programs, and they do a great job. There's a lot of leadership potential with those students.
Where does the funding come for Hillel, for your?
I mean, all the fundraising, we get money from the Jewish Federation locally, and then it's mostly private donors and
what about alumni?
Alumni.
What about
parents.
the National Hillel Association? Do they help you out?
They do not.
Really?
They, like I would say about 5 or 6 years ago, they used to give like unrestricted allocations to every Hillel, depending on your student population and other things, and they stopped doing that after 2008 and whatever. But
unrestricted meaning you can use the money for whatever you want, not unrestricted where it's unlimited.
Oh no, not unlimited. Yes, unrestricted. Right.
So.
But they don't do that anymore.
They don't do that. Okay,
No.
So it's got to be for a specific purpose.
They have some grants you can apply for, but the funding is way less than it ever was. Yeah.
So what's this? Oh, you spoke. Oh, I know. There was also another group, RZA, Revisionist Zionist Alliance.
Yeah, they're long since
gone.
Yeah.
But you heard of them?
I know a little bit about them.
They were more of an activist group. I remember they used to have Mayor Kahana come up, way back when, 20, 30 years ago, whatever.
Right.
And speak to small groups of like 8 to 10 people.
Wow.
But it was really impressive. I got to meet him twice. And,
that's amazing. Wow.
Amazing, yeah. So have you seen any other activist groups, spark up, pro-Jewish, pro-Israeli, but still, like RZA, like that?
I don't think anything, I mean, again, I wasn't there. I don't really know RZA.
Militant ideology.
Not as much. I mean, I would say there have been a few different iterations of pro-Israel groups in the time that I've been at UAlbany, but they tend to be, I mean, the Great Danes for Israel does a lot of like political activism, bringing speakers to speak about, pro-Israel topics or, against BDS or different things, but not quite as militant. Our students don't seem to be drawn to the political as much. They're more interested in like cultural, learning about Israeli culture, not so much politics. So
you're not allowed, Hillel's not allowed to take positions on political issues, or are you anti-BDS? Are you pro-BDS?
Yeah, no, anti-BDS. Yeah, Hillel in general is anti-BDS.
I don't presume anything anymore.
Well, fair enough.
I've seen it all.
Yes, no, that's true.
And then you were a speaker at a Federation event, the Next Door Premixer Joint Society event, way back in last year. It was beginning January of last year.
Yes.
And you spoke about conversation on Israel at SUNY Albany.
Right.
So what was that about? Well, how did you, you would think that you were speaking to the converted, you would be speaking, to the people who already know all about that. But what was your talk?
Right.
How did your talk engage everyone?
I'm trying to remember.
It's a year and a half ago. I know.
I've spoken in a lot of other things since then. I mean, I tried to give them a sense. I first of all I feel like it's important that people understand that although a lot of what we see in the Jewish press and in news in general is a lot about the BDS issues on campus and how students are suffering because there's all this anti-Israel stuff, that there's a ton of campuses around that don't have that, like us. And so but it's important not to just say, oh, we don't have to deal with that, we're good, but to do tons of stuff to educate the campus, the Jewish students, the non-Jewish students about Israel so that people are ready and have facts that they are armed with when or if they encounter some anti-Israel activity. So I think that's what I kind of spoke about is what's happening at UAlbany, the positive side, and then hearing from people about their experience in college in terms of Israel or if they've been to Israel, different things, and then sort of how we can steps we can take to kind of fight the anti-Israel when we encounter it, or how to educate ourselves better.
So the next question is obviously, well, how do you?
Well, it's hard.
What steps do you take?
It's hard, and I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in any way because I haven't had to really deal with it too much, but I think arming people with information is really key. A lot of students I've spoken to or heard from other colleagues, that students get these anti-Israel attacks and they just don't feel like they have the info to combat it. They don't know what to say. They just think, oh my gosh, I'm not prepared for this conversation.
So the other side wins at that point.
Right, because they just retreat. So, educating Jewish students about Israel, not being afraid to shy away from, or not shying away from the stuff that's a little bit more touchy or controversial. I think that's a big piece, is just having students feel confident in their Israel knowledge.
Dennis Prager, who's a national syndicated columnist and has a radio show, and he talked to the National Chabad in Washington, D.C., and he advocated, and it's very interesting, he says, well, college, and maybe he's in California, and like you say, there are other campuses that are really, BDS campuses, but he always advocated that they should take a gap year, 1 year in Israel. Because once you see Israel, and then you're not going, you see how they're living, and they're helping the Arabs, and no one's beating anybody up, and et cetera, et cetera. Prejudiced Arabs are working along with the Israelis very nicely. So then someone tells you, oh, they're mean. Come on, I saw it. You can't tell me what you want. So he was a very big advocate, because like you say, you have a Jewish kid that comes on campus, they maybe not, they're 18, they dropped out at bar mitzvah, so for 5 years they don't even know what Judaism is. They half forgot what Hebrew school is. They know it wasn't talk about Israel, and someone says Israelis are no good, so maybe you're right. Who knows? Maybe they're, they took the Arab lands, they're so mean, et cetera, all their propaganda. But if you see it, so do you advocate a little bit to at least a summer to Israel, or if not a gap year or something?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a lot of students who come to UAlbany having done a gap year in Israel. And I mean, their experiences are amazing and very varied programs, but still, their connection with Israel is so deep. We do birthright trips through Hillel, and I strongly recommend that students go on those trips. Because I do think, even though it's only 10 days, it still gives them a sense of a connection to the place that they didn't have before.
That'd be interesting, because they did come out something like last year and said they try to follow up. I mean, obviously spending their millions of dollars sending for nothing a student to Israel in 10 days. Obviously, it's a lot of money for even one student, let alone the thousands that they send. And, they wanted to analyze what the kind of bang for their buck. And they said they weren't so, I guess that's what I'm asking, what do you see from a birthright student? They didn't see so much like, oh, now I'm going to be Jewish, or I'm going to join my synagogue, and I'm going to go to services all the time. But, it was minimal, but maybe that's minimal enough to keep their nose above water, to say, like what we were saying, not to be a pro-BDS. I mean, that doesn't mean they're an active student anymore.
Right. I mean, we've had a lot of students come back from birthright and become very actively involved who weren't before. So I do think that it has an impact. Obviously, it's not going to be for everybody, but for a lot of students, I think it has an impact. And I think that there are a lot, I would say the majority of the students, at least that we've taken, come back with some much more of a sense of a connection to Israel. I mean, some of them had none before they left, you know what I mean? And they come back really connected.
I just wanted to ask you, it says here in my notes that Chapel House is privately owned by the Capital Area Council on Churches, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Albany, and United Jewish Federation. And I presume that's correct because I read it in the Times-Union. And it's for use by students, faculty, alumni, and friends of the university. Is that a statement accurate?
Yeah, I mean...
Do you know how much money Federation needs to put into that Chapel House in order to keep it going as a...
Well, so my it's now called the Interfaith Center, but Chapel House is its own 501c3 nonprofit. It was started by those three faith groups who put in, I think, in addition to the university, I'm not an expert, I am not the director of the Interfaith Center, but that those three faith groups and the university put money in to initially build that building.
Okay.
And that they do a lot of fundraising and stuff on their own and do still get support from all of those organizations
to keep things running. Does the allocations committee give Chapel House, give the Interfaith Center any money on a regular basis?
I don't think it comes from the allocations committee. I think it's a separate somehow.
Somehow.
But again, it's not my,
It's not, because I would think they would, you would put in a request that, oh, we're going to do this programming and that programming and...
Well, so that's where it's different because Hillel is our own 501c3 nonprofit, and so we go through the allocations process to get money from the Federation. The Interfaith Center is a separate entity, so they do, and I'm not really in charge of that, so I don't know exactly how it works or how much money they get.
But I thought over the 8 years you might have had an inkling of how this, just even out of curiosity, how the financial mechanisms work.
I know that they do get ongoing funds from
Federation
and the Council of Churches and the Diocese, but I don't know how much or how they apply for it. I don't have to deal with it.
But there's an ongoing commitment. Okay. Now, if I mention the name Susan Sherman, what does that mean to you?
Susan Sherman.
There's a garden there.
Oh yeah, Malcolm Sherman's wife.
Yeah, right. Yes. Okay. So tell us about Susan. I mean, because you were there when
we dedicated the garden for her. Yeah, I never knew her.
Right.
So I don't really know. I know that Malcolm was, and I think continues to be, a big supporter of the Interfaith Center.
Right.
And he's a professor at UAlbany.
Math.
Yeah. And so that's very important to him, and the work that, and somewhat supportive of Hillel also, and very pro-Israel, so like some of the pro-Israel stuff that we're doing.
Okay. And then there was another, there was another person who also was very involved, a prominent member in the community. She does real estate.
I don't know.
She does her husband's a dentist. No, they're in Latham. They have a joint office in Latham.
I don't know. All right, but I know someone that Don Cohn, who's one of my congregants in Delmar, he had a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was like, again, New York, even though it's like funny for anybody who's living now, they think that it's a rundown place. They say, you're crazy, Brooklyn real estate is, red hot.
Right.
But, all right, 30, 40 years ago, these old neighborhoods were going downhill and down to almost to the Ambers. And they said, what should we do with the Torah scrolls? Because a lot of synagogues were closing up. They were now in these rundown neighborhoods. And so he was a child, but, when he was bar mitzvah there, but his parents were big people, we're going to give it to Don Cohn, one of the Torahs. What else should we do? Mm-hmm. So Don Cohn, in turn, because he was a professor,
right,
and therefore he gave the Torah to the Hillel.
Right.
I don't know how many Torahs you have now, but
we have 2.
All right, so that was one of them.
Yeah, and we recently lent it back to him for his granddaughter's bat mitzvah, I think, which was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's
really
very good. Yeah. And now you teach also on campus. You're an adjunct professor.
Yeah.
And what topic do you teach? Because I think I have an old citation. You have Survey of Jewish Civilization.
Yeah, so I do still teach. I've been teaching that class for 6-7 years. Survey of Jewish Civilization, which is a Jewish history class, basically from Bible to today. So it's like a real fast fly through history. but it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy teaching it.
3,000 years in 6 months.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, but it's a lot of fun. You know, I try to delve into specific
Sure.
things to kind of keep students interested. My class always fills up, so I guess people like it.
How many kids in the class?
60 usually.
Okay. So you're not in a big lecture center?
Not gigantic, but
You are in a
big
lecture
enough.
center?
It varies. They put me in
Varies.
different
They
places.
put you in different places, okay.
Yeah. But this fall, I'm actually also teaching a freshman seminar class about kind of contemporary issues in Judaism. So we're going to look at tattoos and food and sexuality and kind of interesting, like, hot topics in Judaism. So
Hot topics for that age group?
yes, absolutely right. Yes.
There wouldn't be hot topics for every age group.
No, that's very true. You are correct. Definitely.
So what do you find has changed at the university over the 8 years in terms of Jewish culture, life and culture? Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I feel like, what's changed? I think people are looking for more connection. I think something about social media has made people actually feel sometimes more disconnected than connected, and more lonely. So I think that I feel like that's been a change over the years, is just that people are really looking for connection in a deeper way than before. I mean, people are always looking for connection, but it seems like a stronger pull right now.
And what happens for Shabbos meals? You have a cooperative effort with the Shabbos house
Right.
every other Friday or something. Can you talk about that instead of me talking about it?
Yeah. So we have a very unique, for almost any college campus, situation where we work very collaboratively with Chabad. So we alternate our Shabbat dinners. So one week they'll host it, the next week we'll host it.
You'll host it in the campus center?
We do it in the campus center, different rooms depending on the week.
Okay.
But it's pretty amazing. They come to our Shabbat dinners, I go to their Shabbat dinners. So it sets up this like sense of one big Jewish community on campus, which is pretty amazing.
And how
students.
about the kashrut? I mean, you have all the meals are kosher?
All the meals are kosher, yeah. We have a kosher.
I've seen everything, so I don't take anything for
Yes,
granted.
no, fair enough.
Okay.
We have a kosher dining hall on campus, and they
In
cater
Dutch
it.
Quad,
Yeah.
Oh, they cater it?
They cater it.
Cater.
Cater,
As you
yes.
can-
Sometimes better, sometimes less good, but
Well, we had University Auxiliary Services, UAS, when I was on
Oh, yeah.
campus, and we always called the hamburgers hockey pucks.
oh no, that's terrible.
It is terrible.
It's
but
the food has actually gotten better over the years, amazingly enough. But, you know, it does the
Okay.
trick. It brings people together. That's
It does,
the full
and
point.
that's what's important, yes.
Yeah.
So do you cook for Shabbos house, or you don't, and they cook for you, or you don't do any personal cooking? It's all done
No,
through-
yeah, we order the food through,
You just order it from them.
yeah, the
And is
food
it,
service.
which food service, who's doing the kosher food now?
It's Sodexo is the
Yeah.
the big company, but
Who's the rabbi on campus who oversees the kashrut?
it's different people from the VOD. I mean, they have I don't really deal with that. That's like the food service people and the VOD deal with it, but
I
it's
thought
it's
after
VOD.
8 years you might know who.
Yeah, well, they have different. They have people,
Different
people
rolling through.
come
yeah, okay.
in and out. So
I guess then no one gets too comfortable being in the same place, and it sort of avoids for any missteps.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're there for the first time or you're fresh with something, you really stay on your toes as opposed to
I think
I've
so.
been doing okay, and then you let things slide. And,
Right.
I guess that's even better for kashrut.
Right, I think
Yeah.
that's probably true.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else that we didn't know enough to ask you that you'd like to bring up? That you might have come here to, mention, and because we don't rehearse these.
Right. Just that I think we sort of have touched on this before, but that, college is a time when students are really trying to figure out who they are, and I think it's so important that there are multiple Jewish voices on campus. Hillel is a pluralist organization, so we're not affiliated with any particular stream of Judaism. And that's something that's really important to me as a rabbi, is to show people that there's this, wide variety of ways to be Jewish out there, and for them to be able to find who they are through that process. So I think but that's important.
All right, thank you
you.
very much for being the Jewish View, and much success in teaching the Jewish kids, and we'll talk to you in the future. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Much continued success.
Thank you.